Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
Historically, there has been a lot of debate surrounding the use of sign language or oralism in deaf education. But today, technologies and innovative approaches are opening up new learning opportunities for people who are hard of hearing. Let's take a look. How can deaf children enjoy learning if they have never had the chance to develop their sign language? How can they learn to love reading if they have never read a book in their native language? Let's see how one project in Argentina is adapting storybooks to these children's needs.
In Argentina, more than 80% of deaf people are still functionally illiterate. They are considered disabled and, for the most part, excluded by society. Athul was born deaf into a family which could all hear, as were more than 90% of deaf children in Argentina. But she is benefiting from a unique project which has been started by Canales, a civil association which wants to promote reading for deaf children with video books. The communication and emotional barriers can be enormous and cause many long-term problems when there is no way for the family to communicate. Video books also help families to use LSA, which is the Argentine sign language.
Through our sword reading, we also learn their language.
The Osvaldo Magnasco Public School for Deaf Children was one of the first to adopt the bilingual model used by video books.
We started to review and discuss new educational approaches that recognize deaf children as speakers of their own language and with the ability to learn, in this case Spanish as their second language, and access educational content and the cultural world in their own language, which is sign language.
The video books include voiceovers, and as well as using them in class, the school organises courses for parents and workshops with hearing children, encouraging learning and integration under a common reference. With the video books and the activities generated from them, children have access to the language, culture and fiction.
When I grow up, I would like to study.
The video books are created by deaf and hearing people and use technologies as a tool to reach deaf children in urban and rural areas, guaranteeing easy access through a presenter.
It's very difficult for these children to grow up alone. We approach the video books as a way of bringing them closer to culture, but also as a way of offering them a person with whom they can identify.
At an 1880 conference, educators banned the use of sign language in the classroom, a rule that was difficult to enforce but had a serious impact on the deaf community. What is the situation now? In this report, a deaf teacher explains how he is trying to bridge the gap between hearing people and those who are deaf or hard of hearing.
The field of work that I was in was that I was a retouch artist. I did that for about 12.5 years. One day an announcement was made that the company was going to close, so I thought, I would really like to get back into helping deaf people. Currently I'm teaching American Sign Language, and the people that I teach, they're not deaf, but that's okay, because by doing that, I'm helping this audience understand the deaf world and the deaf community better. Many people that can hear are fearful that if their child is born deaf, what's going to happen? They're trying to consider things like cochlear implants to get them to be more like people who can hear. And I'm trying my best to educate people so that these people have a better understanding of deaf people.
When I came in, everybody was telling me he was deaf, and the class was silent, and I was really nervous. I was like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm gonna catch on, but it's actually a little bit easier because you just kind of throw yourself in the language, so you have no choice but to catch on pretty quickly.
On the first day, if the students would have questions, they would write the question down. For example, if they wanted to use the bathroom, I would show them the sign for that, and they would go, oh, there's a sign for that. So that was one of the first things I used to teach them, their question, and that was part of building the bridge between their language and my language. Most schools for deaf prefer that the instructors have a master's degree. So I went back to college at Hunter College in New York to receive my master's degree.
Excuse me, it's not that I'm so knowledgeable about this topic.
One of the requirements to get a job is a state certification for teaching. There are many people that can hear, that can pass the test, because English is their first language. Their sign language skills are really not satisfactory or up to the job, but they're still allowed to teach students that are deaf. Whereas a deaf person who has the language and the ability to communicate with the deaf students doesn't have that opportunity because they cannot pass the written test.
Many people wonder how Beethoven continued composing music after he began losing his hearing. But what about if you could feel the sound of a cello or sense the vibrations of a flute?
Sensing the sound of a drum or the vibrations of a cello with your whole body. That's what the project Feel the Music from the Mahler Chamber Orchestra is all about. In some European countries, its musicians visit deaf and hard of hearing children in the classroom. In a second step, the MCO invites them into the orchestra's world. This time, 3 schools from Zurich and around Lucerne in Switzerland are taking part. A life-enhancing project for both children and musicians.
I think when they sit close to the musicians and see their movements, they realize how energy is transmitted. And this is the reason why it's beautiful when they're with us, what they experience, and we can feel they're happy at a point. For instance, when the music is getting surprisingly loud or incredibly impulsive.
Children are experiencing the sound of the instruments. They touch them, sit under the piano, and conduct the musicians. Reciprocal applause.
It felt great because there were lots of violins playing in the orchestra. It was a beautiful feeling, the vibrations.
Touching the instrument, I could feel it through my hand and my arm and my whole body. But also all the other instruments have transmitted vibrations to my body.
Feel the Music is part of the Mahler Chamber Orchestra's Beethoven Journey concert series. It performs with famous conductors and soloists, such as the Norwegian pianist Leif Ove Ansnes. The idea for the workshop with deaf and hard of hearing children was born because of Beethoven, who himself turned hard of hearing in his 20s and later deaf, which totally influenced his compositions.
The music becomes wilder. It breaks boundaries all the time. And then later on also it becomes more private. And he gets obsessed with trills, for instance, in the piano. This means 2 repeated notes again and again and again and again, creating a vibration and creating the feeling that we are flying with the music. And all these kind of things, I wonder, I'm sure it must have some kind of connection to his handicap.
Since May 2012, there have to date been workshops in 8 European countries. Around 150 children have taken part. After the experience, and surrounded by the orchestra, the school children are invited to draw their impressions.
After every project, we choose some pictures which will be framed and presented in our Feel the Music exhibition in the foyer, together with information about the project and stories the children told us about their pictures. That's so we can show the public how the children deal with the music and what it can mean to them. It enables us to promote the issue, which is our principal aim.
The climax is approaching. The Mahler Chamber Orchestra and Leif Ove Ansnes plays Beethoven's 1st and 5th piano concert at the Lucerne Festival, while the deaf and hard of hearing children are sitting in the audience, all their senses wide awake. At the end, deaf applause that speaks volumes.
Have you experienced hearing loss or have you studied with a hard of hearing teacher? We want you to share your education experiences with us on our social media pages. We look forward to reading your messages. Goodbye.
Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.